Hi everyone, it's Darlene. Welcome back for another card video. Today I'm using one of the new sets by Stampin' Up! Called Words of Truth. I'm going to be using the Truth word, and there's a lot of really cute sayings in this one. And then I've got the My Favorite Things striped background. I'm going to start off by taking my Stampin' Up! Craft white ink, which did the best in my test, and I'm going to ink up my Truth stamp and stamp it onto this is Crumb Cake Stampin' Up! Cardstock. And I'm just going to kind of move it off to the right a little bit so that I have some room both on the left and on the right, and I can adjust it later. Now when I'm cleaning white ink off my stamp, I like to first take a baby wipe and get the majority of the white ink off because my absorber doesn't really like white ink very much. For some reason it tends to get really stiff in those areas, so I just kind of finish it off with my absorber and try to avoid getting a bunch of white ink on it. Now I'm going to open up my absorber so you can see it. It is very stained, and I've been using it for a few months now. And I've been using the same little square here, and I just rinse it under water, squeeze it out, and it's ready to go. I love it for my stamp cleaner. Now I'm going to use the MISTI for this stamp because it has a lot of solid areas. I'm going to remove my foam strip here because I don't need it. It's already got foam on the stamp. And I cut my So Saffron down to 6 inches across. And the reason why I'm using 6 inches is because when I slant this piece of cardstock, it's actually going to extend beyond 5.5 inches. So now I put my stamp on the lid of the MISTI about a half of a square in on the bottom and on the right. And then I lined my So Saffron up in the corner. So that way I made sure that I got as much as I could on my cardstock. And I'm going to be trimming it so it doesn't have to be perfect. But I'm actually going to do this 3 times. I'm going to use my Versamark pad because I'm going to be heat embossing with some white powder. And I just want to make sure I get really good solid image before I heat emboss. So now that I've done that 3 times, I'm going to take my white embossing powder, sprinkle it on, and then I'll heat it to set it. And because I stamped it 3 times, I got a really good solid image. Now you can see there are just a couple little areas that didn't get the embossing powder, and that's really easy to fix. I can just take my white gel pen, my Uniball white gel pen, I just kind of tap it in the different areas that missed it, and there really wasn't very many. And then I like to kind of rub it with my finger to even it out. Now I'm going to take a So Saffron marker, and what I love about Stampin' Up! Is the coordination of all the papers and the markers and the inks. So I'm going to color the tops of each of these letters, and because it's white, it's going to be very, very kind of pale So Saffron, and I want to make sure I don't hit my marker on the crumb cake because it'll look really super dark. So I'm going to be careful to stay in the lines here. Now, I forgot the period, but I'll fill that in later. I did notice I got a little bit of white ink on my tip, and so I just wrote on a piece of scratch paper and it came off, so it's no big deal. Now I've got my Copic multiliner in 0.3, and I felt like this word sentiment looked very sketchy, and I wanted to make it look even sketchier and make it pop. So I'm outlining the top of every letter with my Copic liner, and it doesn't have to be perfect because I want it to look like it was written, and so it's nice that I have this guide and I don't have to draw it from scratch. So I'm going to go over the top of the letter and then also the entire shadow, and then the shadow area has lines in it that's stamped with my white ink, and I'm going to take, sorry I'm covering it here, but I'm going to take my marker and my pen here, and I'm just going to draw random lines, and I'm not really going to pay attention to where the white lines are. So I'm going to continue this through the whole word, and I love the way the black marker really make this sentiment pop. Okay, so I trimmed it as close as I could at the top and the bottom, and then because I didn't really measure this to be exact, I'm just going to get a piece of black cardstock, and I'll figure out what mat I want at the top, and then I'll mark the bottom of it and run it through my trimmer. And now I'll have a black mat. I'm just going to go ahead and mat the whole strip because I'm not sure how long of the strip I'm going to need. So now I want to make sure my stripes line up with the letters, so I'm just kind of figuring out what slant I want my word to be at. And once I figure that out, I'm going to take a pencil and I'm just going to draw a line at the bottom here. And then I decided, you know, I really need a line at the top too, so I see where the top of the sentiment is going to be. So I'm going to draw that line, and now I'll take my So Saffron piece, and now you can see why I needed to cut it longer than 5 1/4. or I'm sorry, 5.5, because it's going to extend beyond that. So I'm looking at this upper right hand point to make sure that all my white is covered. Now I know that I just need to make sure that my line is below that top line, the edge of this yellow cardstock. So I'm going to make sure everything's covered, then I'm going to flip it over very carefully so it doesn't move. Make sure that it's all covered, and it is, and then I'll just draw my lines according to the edge of my card base here. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually cut these lines with the trimmer. And that way I'll know exactly that my lines are perfectly aligned in the direction of my letters when I put this piece of cardstock on my card base. So here it is now, and you can see it's slanted and it fits. And I can see my truth is going to go right underneath there, and my stripes are going to be lined up with the letters. Now, because my truth word had so much shadowing, I wanted to also create some dimension in my stripes. Now, this is a Versamarker pen, which is basically Versamark ink in marker form. And I'm using a ruler because I want my lines to be very straight, because they're going to be shadows of these lines. And these lines are very straight, so I want to make sure that my lines are straight. And I'm just going to put my ruler, just position it about 1/16 of an inch or so, maybe 1/8, but no more than that, to the left of each of these lines, and I'm going to draw a line with my Versamarker, and I'm going to be very smooth about it and very consistent and kind of slow, and that'll really allow the ink to absorb into the paper. And so here I am drawing my last line here, and that'll finish it up for the dimension. I think this really came out nice. Now notice that my shadow is to the right, just like my shadow is to the right in my word. So I made sure that that the light perspective was from the same direction. Now I'm going to stamp my sentiment here using some black archival ink by Ranger on some So Saffron cardstock. I use this ink because it's fast drying, and I've had a lot of issues with wet ink getting on my cards where it's not supposed to be. So I decided to just use the archival ink, which is a really great black ink for sentiments. It's very crisp and clear. So now I'm putting my card together. I'm going to put my So Saffron here at the top. I did notice that it came out just a little extra long on the end, which is fine. So I just took a scissor and I trimmed it off. And then I put the entire sentiment, the truth here, on the card, and made sure that my crumb cake was hanging off of both sides, and then I just trimmed it off. So I like to deal with a lot of extras, so I know I have room to fix any mistakes that I have. Now for this sentiment, I'm going to go ahead and put some 2A glue pen on it and put it right underneath the truth. And that's the card for today. Pretty simple and easy to make, and I really like the way it turned out. So I hope you enjoyed that, and I will see you next time. Thanks for watching.